how these type of payments are changing the way that people interact in terms of payment services, and how that could actually create more opportunities. Right, in module 7, then we will look at FinTech regulations specifically. We will look at different kinds of compliance requirements and regulations in finance. We will look at a particular segment of FinTech, which is called RegTech. And RegTech are kind of applications that specifically catered for financial institutions to help them comply with regulations. So there's technology to help our banks and other financial institutions comply with regulations as well. And then in module 7 as well, we will cover the different kinds of regulations and how that affects a FinTech offering in those countries. So we will zoom in into Singapore regulations in particular, because the Monetary Authority of Singapore is quite advanced in terms of their regulations for financial technology. So we'll look at how they are kind of trying to grow the ecosystem here in Singapore, and we'll look at how they are kind of adopting regulation to fit the kind of constantly changing technology landscape as well. So very interestingly, recently the MAS, they launched a Payment Services Act, and in this Payment Services Act, it actually encompasses cryptocurrency providers as well, or more broadly, digital asset providers, right? And they actually provide guidelines for these providers to operate in the country, right? So we will look at those things when they come to module 7, right? And finally, in module 8, we will take a high-level view of the kind of opportunities that are now in FinTech. We will look at, in particular, we will zoom in on 2 things. One is the financial inclusion space. Now, why financial inclusion is very important for FinTech? Because the technology is allowing banks or other financial institutions to lower their costs tremendously. And by lowering their costs tremendously, it means that the barrier of entry for their customers is now lower, right? So they should be able to onboard more of the financially excluded population that previously they may not be able to cater to, because they have very small amount of savings, or they are only able to invest in very small amounts as well. So the financial inclusion space is very huge. I think statistics has shown that at least around 30 to 40% of the world is financially excluded, which means they don't have a proper bank account and they don't have proper access to financial services, right? So with the advance in technology, banks can now tap onto these and provide financial services to these excluded group as well. And that can be a very interesting place for growth for financial services. Right, another area we will zoom into is tech fins or tech giants, which we previously also mentioned. Right, so these tech giants in the West, we have the GAFAs, Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. So we will look at each of these tech giants and what are their financial FinTech strategies and what kind of financial offerings that they've been making over the past few years. We also look at China. We will look at Alibaba in particular. We will look at WeChat or their parent company Tencent in particular, into the kind of financial offerings in that space. We will also look at ASEAN. We will look at so we will run through a use case of Grab and Gojek. So these are 2 ride-sharing applications in this region that are operating and competing in the ASEAN region, and what are their financial strategies when it comes to offering financial services on their mobile applications, right? And then we will also, as part of the module 8, we will look at the various risks when it comes to either adopting FinTech using an existing financial technology provider, or actually becoming a financial technology provider yourself, right? So we'll explore the different risk considerations, and we will introduce kind of a framework as well to assessing risk in your organization when it comes to adopting this sort of, or introducing this sort of financial technology. Okay, so that's the overview of the program. The program aims to provide a kind of high-level overview of all the different types of technology that are affecting the space. We try to introduce to you what are the kind of newer technologies that's being adopted. In particular, we have a slightly deeper dive into blockchain to provide kind of an interesting, a deeper angle into how this sort of decentralized applications work, right? And then we also look at the ASEAN region in particular. We have various different use cases that cover ASEAN type of fintechs. We look at the Singapore regulatory landscape. We look at ASEAN companies as well, right? So that's the broad overview of the program. I'll now hand over back to Carmen, right? Continue.
Great, thanks so much, Dr. Ernie. Appreciate it. Very good introduction. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the learning journey, what you can expect as you go through the course. So the first thing that you will experience is an orientation week. So during the week, you'll be introduced to the other participants. So very much like the chat window here, but this is a little bit more detailed. So we use discussion boards. Because this is going to be a relatively asynchronous course, you're not really going to be able to meet together with all of your fellow students. So in that particular case, it's a good back and forth in terms of being able to introduce who you are, as well as your background and experience. Also, it's good for me to get to know a little bit about you, so that as we go through the process and as we do go through the live sessions, I kind of know your background, so it helps me to be able to provide a level of detail that may help you as I guide you through the course itself. So that's usually a good thing to do. So that's what'll happen during the orientation week. We'll also introduce you to the learning management system. So as we go through the process, we use Canvas, which is a learning management system, but basically it orchestrates the week by week materials and the assignments that are required, gives you the platform with which to not only see the materials and take the materials asynchronously, but also to be able to submit your work as you complete the assignments as you go through the process. And as I said before, it also provides us with a discussion board, which allows us to be able to communicate back and forth, and an email system, so you can reach out to me or program support as you move through the course. And this way, I can be responsive to any questions that you might have or queries that you might have related to the course content. From a weekly goals perspective, you'll have learning goals that are set for the week, so you can review the goals before the week starts. And as I said before, there are assignments that may be assigned. It could be reading, it could be completion of material, it could be discussion boards as you go through the week. And the discussion boards can be anything from the introduction that I just talked about, so get to know each other a little bit better, to we actually do two discussion boards which are set up sort of as a, we split the cohort into two different teams and basically take differing sides of a particular opinion. So like one will be around, for example, ethics or the ethical use of data, for example, in the FinTech services space. And so some people would take the pro side of the argument, others would take the con side of the argument. So we sort of get a lively back and forth. But what I've seen in having taught this course before is that people do tend to get into a lot more detail, and lots of really good reading material come out as part of this. So in terms of getting into depth areas that you might be more interested in, you can typically find that other students will want to engage in more lively discussion in particular areas of interest to them, which is also good for me to see as I monitor those discussion boards, because those are particular areas where we can dive into a little bit more detail in the live sessions that I will be hosting. The other part is clarifying any doubts. So this is, I can answer questions certainly in the live webinars, but sometimes you may not want to wait for the live webinars. So in those particular cases, then we can use discussion boards or emails, or you can just reach out to me directly through whatever mechanism you feel most comfortable. But I can answer your questions as quickly as possible, because we're probably in different time zones, considering I'm in the East Coast of the U.S. But if that's the case, like I said, we want to answer your questions as quickly as possible because, certainly as you're thinking through or working through the material, you want to ensure that you can continue to move forward. And then any follow-up. So the Emeritus Program Support Team will follow up email or phone calls with any problems that you might have related to the course technical aspects itself, like the operations of the Canvas system, for example, or inability to submit your assignments, for example, or even access to the services through the learning management system. So the program support team does an awesome job of being able to support you from a technical perspective, so they can absolutely help you through. And if they need to reach out to me for particular characteristics, they will do that as well. So that's the journey side. If we think about the end goal, so here you would receive a certificate on completion. The certificate will be a verified digital certificate by NUS Business School upon completion of the course. So that's what you can look forward to once you've completed. And in terms of dates, the program would start on the 3rd of December, which is coming up pretty quickly. And then the payment terms are identified here. I don't think I need to read through those in too much detail, but you can reach out to the coordinators for the course if you want more details related to how to pay for the course and how to register specifically. I'm sure those materials have been made available to you. So with that, I'll take you to the Q&A session. So I see that there's already some questions that have been entered. So I think we're going to go through let me just see if I can do this the easiest. And what I'll do is, I think this way you can kind of see them, and I'll take them in order that they came, and then we can work through them. And Dr. Ernie, you'll probably end up answering most of these, but let's go through these. So what are examples of digital technologies in the context of this program?
Okay, yeah, I guess we kind of covered the various technologies in the slides earlier. I think the key technologies that we will focus on are one, blockchain technology, second, AI and machine learning. These are the two main types of technology where we will kind of dive into use cases as well, and how fintechs are adopting or utilizing this sort of technology, right? We will also kind of go through other use cases that are more application specific, like for example, the payments and the lending space, right? And in those examples, we will also kind of mention the different technologies involved, but usually like one fintech don't just use one type of technology, they use various different things. So it basically, yeah, so those are the type of technologies, I guess, are digital technologies in that space that's being applied to finance.
Yep, great. So the next question is about regulations. So this is regulations governing fintech technologies. And I know you already talked about some of the cryptocurrency, which does do the inter or cross-border data funds transfer, but it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about this.
So we will cover in the cryptocurrency module, we will cover some of these regulation involving cryptocurrencies itself in a global context, and also zoom into particular countries that have special kind of regulations for cryptocurrencies. In the regulation module, we will take a broader overview. We will kind of explore a couple of regions, in particular APEC and ASEAN, right? So we will talk about the different types of the kind of the face of the ecosystem, like for example, countries like Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Singapore, right? So we will kind of provide a broader overview of that, and then we will kind of dive into, in particular, Singapore regulations as well.
Great, thank you. The next one is related to, let's see, how relevant are these modules to legal fraternity? I believe that's a formal, yeah.
Yeah, I guess fintech will kind of affect every industry in a way, right? Because it's going to infiltrate into our personal lives as well as our business lives in various different ways, right? And um, in terms of the legal fraternity, it's kind of good to get a head start in understanding these technologies because your clients are going to start coming to you asking about, if they want to offer particular services, what are their considerations and what are the legal considerations. I mean, we don't provide the legal answer in the context of this module, but if you are a practicing lawyer yourself, you can um, it gives you like that overview on what's happening in the space, and then probably then you can have a kind of a deeper understanding of how it's going to affect you in terms of the advice that you give to your clients.
Great, thank you. So the next one's related to the cloud. So this has to do with governments choosing cloud services or service providers. Do you need to keep all the information in just one cloud server? Can you use multiples? Probably based on regulatory constraints.
Yes, so this comes back to regulation. And it differs from country to country. Like in this region, Indonesia has a kind of a data sovereignty law. So even if you put your data on cloud, it has to stay within the country in Indonesia, right? In Singapore, there is a stricter kind of cloud guideline on financial services as well, right? So the Monetary Authority of Singapore has a particular set of regulations for the utilization of cloud for banks, right? So it really depends on the regulatory environment and the application and what type of financial services you're offering, right? So again, it's a risk-based approach, right? So the higher the risk, the more constrained it will be. It may have to be a particular government-approved provider, or it may have to stay within the country.
Great. Lots of regulation questions. So the next one's related to government regulations, and this is the friction between Jack Ma and Chinese government. Big impact.
Okay, so the Alibaba, the Ant Financial IPO is quite a recent event, so that's not really covered within the modules itself. Yeah, so it is interesting. So I think the classes do give you a kind of a background in order to explore this question, right? In order to kind of really think deeper about this question, right? What's the regulatory environment in China, and what are their considerations when it comes to fintech offerings, especially the risks that it brings to the whole economy and the whole ecosystem, right? There are a lot of people, right? So in our peer-to-peer lending use case, we see that a lot of people in China were affected by the closure of these peer-to-peer lending firms, right? And that has a very big impact to the economy, and these are within the considerations of the Chinese government as well. So yeah, so the background that you get from the modules will help you kind of think about this issue, like what's happening now with Jack Ma and the Chinese government, and why the Chinese government has chosen to do this as well. I think it's very kind of there's various risk considerations for the government as well, right? And they want to foster innovation, but at the same time, they need to ensure that the economy stays safe, right? So yeah, so that is a debatable question. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, this is the examining the challenges of availing providing fintech services across jurisdictions, which also feels a little regulatory in nature, but yep.
I think in the final module, we do cover kind of a risk assessment framework, right? So we will look at the different kind of challenges that you will face, but then it's not jurisdiction specific, I guess. But then we do kind of cover the regulation, so it's kind of built into the course itself that you need to consider these regulations when you are going to offer your financial services.
That's great. And and I don't know the UK leveling system, but does anyone know the level of the course related to the UK system? Don't know. Anyone on the program team able to answer this one? I don't have any familiarity. Okay,
I have
maybe
no
we can follow
idea
up
as
with that
well.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can follow up on that one. So yeah, sorry, we can't answer that one. This one, would the course cover any technical details? If not, which one in NUS offers this?
With so the course is not technical in nature. There are some technical overviews of blockchain, but then that's all we cover. There's no kind of programming or coding in this module, right? Which one in NUS offers this? I'm not sure. Maybe Fallon will know. Is there any?
So currently, I think we don't have any courses that cover the technical aspects of it. So yeah, none that I know of at least.
Yes, what I will say, so if there are particular areas that you may be interested in as we go through the live webinar sessions, I can probably point you to resources that you can use if you're interested in learning more, say about the technical details of blockchain or AI or any of the things that Dr. Ernie would mention in terms of some of the technical aspects. But I can certainly help as we go through that. Okay, and then after the course, what would be the next stage for us to do continued learning? Good question.
Okay, so I think the fintech space is constantly evolving. We want so basically whatever that's mentioned in the course may have changed by the time we reach December, because there will be like new regulations, there will be like new offerings that suddenly comes up, right? So it is like a constant learning journey, I think, in this sense, right? So it kind of gives you the fundamentals to like dive deeper into like news you see related to financial services offerings, right? Like the news you see about the Ant Financial IPO, or in Singapore, the news that you will see about digital banking license applications, right? So these are so it's constantly evolving, and there's always new technologies that's going to be adopted, right? How do you take it on from here into your career, right? So it really depends on what areas you want to dive into, right? If you want to go deeper into a more technical front, you may want to pick up more data analytics skills, right? Machine learning and etc. Right? So then you need to dive deeper into that to become kind of a data science professional in the area of fintech, right? If you're interested in blockchain, then you may want to go deeper into a blockchain programming course, right? Really depends on what's your role. Like if you're taking on a more business type roles, I think the course provides a good enough foundation for you to take it on into your career and into like moving into more fintech related roles as well. Like if you're doing business development, for example, it gives you that kind of breadth that you can explore in your career path. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, and I will say that when you were covering the technologies that were being used, and I'll also add in the regulatory framework, there is so much depth that you can get into in any one of those areas. Like even there are entire degree programs in any one of those AI, IoT. You can go into the level of depth that you require. So we'll be constantly evolving. Okay. And I guess program support, you guys could probably answer the question on the scholarship side. So any other questions related to the program, or questions for Dr. Ernie while we still have him available today to answer questions related to the course? Okay, well, I wanted to thank you all for attending. Hopefully we answered any questions that you might have related to the course. I certainly hope to see you registered and in the course, and then I will see you in the live sessions once it begins. And I'll just, Dr. Ernie, I'll let you make any final parting comments if you'd like, and then we can break.
Right. Yeah. So I think like the main kind of differentiator we are offering here in this module. It kind of takes a more ASEAN and APEC approach to the FinTech, to the understanding FinTech. In particular, we look at this region and we look at China. So it provides a different perspective in terms of how FinTech is evolving in this region. So I hope you guys can like kind of benefit from that.
Excellent. Okay, so any parting comments from program support? Are we all good? If not, as I said, I will hopefully see you all in the class, and I know you'll enjoy it. And with that, enjoy the rest of the evening, afternoon, or morning.
Right.
Thanks for attending, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.